See if getting the newest card in Marvel Snap will bring you great joy, or will you only find scorn? Find out what's going on as I hereby invite everyone to join me on my adventures through Marvel Snap. Hey everybody, it's Annabelle. So we got a brand new card in the Spotlight Cache this week, and that is Scorn. Scorn is a piece of Carnage recovered after his apparent destruction. This piece was used to develop an artificial advanced prosthetic arm. However, the human attached to this arm discarded the symbiote attempting to bind with her. So it detached its arm from her body and went out trying to find a new home. But it never found the right one and came back to the woman whose arm they had taken. And upon the woman seeing the desire for the symbiote to return to her, she now chose to bind with this symbiote. Scorn does not need the human host usually required for a symbiote to exist. The human they are with is just along for the ride. This symbiote is actually bound to the technology of the advanced prosthetic arm as their host, and because of this symbiote having a unique host, it has developed the ability to bind with any technology. They can detach themselves from their human if they need be, and it does not need any living thing to survive. If it can find working technology, it will be fine. Scorn was affected the most by the awakening of the Dark Elder God, Null, who created the symbiotes and wants to use them to conquer the universe and purge it of all life. Even knowing this, the symbiote and its host that it bound itself to gladly became the leader of an apocalyptic cult that were dedicated to worshipping Null, viewing him as a prophet, and they worked on a plan to free him from his prison and managed to succeed and get him back to full strength. Scorn loves to make drama and get attention. They will do unimaginable actions in order to be able to manipulate others. Retaliation is their favorite way of getting even with another person, and they have no issue showing anger and finding ways to express it. They are known to indirectly attack others, and even though they are aware of the responsibility of these actions, they will never feel the need to apologize for the damage they have done or the cruelty they have shown. Scorn is a machine, a symbiote hybrid, on top of it having all the powers of Carnage. They also have the ability to fuse with different kinds of technology and communicate with all forms of this technology, including machinery, computers, and other electronics. They can hack into any cyber system, restore even the most corrupted data information, can negate any power-draining EMPs or computer virus infections that are used on them, and can break even the most secure computer encryption codes. Scorn is a piece of Carnage that got discarded by the person who they were trying to give strength to, so they went out on their own, giving their strength to others, and getting stronger when they did. They discarded again and again until they found the right home. This is represented in Marvel Snaps as when this is discarded, it will give some of its strength to the new host and grow stronger until it is discarded again and must repeat this cycle or it finds a place to call home on your side. So in Marvel Snap, what this card does is it's a 1 cost 2 power with the description of when you discard this particular card, it will give plus 2 power to a random card on your side of the field that is face up, and it will also gain 2 power on its own. And it will return back to your hand. So every time you try to discard it, it will return back to your hand. It will gain plus 2 power and give 2 power to a random face-up card on your side of the board. This is one of the ones that I've gone back and forth with of trying to get a good power rating on, a good star rating on, or I should say. And I've had a real hard time trying to figure out where this went star rating was. But in the end, I ended up with giving it a 2-star, and I need to explain this one because this is one that has to go through a little bit of more of a description than a lot of my other ones. So let's start off with the most obvious point of this. If you were to look at this card as just being a Howard the Duck as a 1-2, as a power and toughness or power and energy, that's the completely wrong way of looking at this. Even if you discard this one time in the entire game, one time whatsoever, you're making a 1-4, and you're giving another 2 power to something on your side of the field, which basically makes it a 1-6. Which means if you get to discard this even once before turn 6, you get to play this down as a 1-6, basically all-encompassing, because you got the 2 power off this and the 2 power to the other card, which makes this even a stronger card as a 1-drop than a Margot. And the nice thing about this being a 1-drop that has the high power is it's completely immune to Killmonger because it stays in your hand each and every time. You don't actually play it onto the field until that very last turn. So unless your opponent can really figure out how to get it to die that last turn, it can be a big last 1-turn power spike. The problem that I have with it is a couple different problems. First of all, it's incredibly hard to put that power on anywhere that you want it to. Let's say, for example, that you want to use Deadpool in this deck. You want to use Deadpool and you want to use Scorn in the same deck. If you get Deadpool down on turn 1, and you get Cowling Wing down on turn 2, the Cowling Wing can hit the Deadpool. I should say the Scorn can hit the Deadpool, but it can also hit the Cowling Wing. And while it's nice that the Cowling Wing will become a 2-6, and that's a ridiculously strong power spike for a 2-drop, you wanted it on the Deadpool. So it's really hard to get that power to go where you want it to. If you're looking for that kind of power, you're almost better off looking at like a Hulkbuster. The other thing is that it kind of has just a +2 power to it, which is the same equivalent of like playing a Forge. And while +2 power is great, there's a lot of times where maybe that +2 power is not going to win you the game. Now, with that being said, we are going to talk about one of its biggest upsides and one of its biggest downsides. We're going to talk about the biggest upside of it, which is basically, for all intents and purposes, it acts as a swarm. I do not see any point in the future where somebody has Scorn and goes out of their way to put Swarm into a deck. If you are having Swarm in your deck, you can easily cut Swarm in your deck, put Scorn in its same spot, and you'll get just as good, if not better, results off of having the Scorn as opposed to the Swarm. And that's going to be hard to say. Scorn-Swarm issue. Now, here's some of its biggest problems. Discarding this card is really hard to do. If we look at the discards that exist, on one, your only choice is Blade. Now, if you get this on the Blade, it's a really good choice for the Blade, because the Blade goes straight up to a 1-5, which again is as powerful, if not more powerful, than playing down a Marta itself. Now, once you get to 2, the only real card that works on 2 for this at all is Cowling Wing. And again, Cowling Wing is great on 2 because if it hits the Cowling Wing, that's a 2-6. That's premium stat line. Once you hit 3, you kind of hit this weird little problem of a lot of discards don't work with it. Your choices are Corvus Glaive, Swordmaster, or Gambit. And we'll talk about Gambit in the end. I will come back to that one in the end. Now, once you hit 4, you have no way of hitting this except for possibly the Silver Samurai. For a guaranteed hit on it, I should say. And even with the Silver Samurai, if you have anything that's higher, anything that's lower than what Scorn's current power is, it won't get it. And if you hit Blade early, if you hit Cowling Wing early, if you hit even a location that discards this for whatever reason, your Silver Samurai is most likely not going to hit the Scorn. Now, there is a weird version of this that I can see happening, where you kind of just put both Silver Samurai and Scorn in a deck that's just missing 2 slots, and use it as kind of a little bit of a taste of discard. We're not going full discard, because the problem with Silver Samurai is it doesn't have a good card that Silver Samurai ever wants to discard. Your choice in the end used to be white to get a actual Swarm. Even Swarm was hard to do at times because of how big it was. So you might play a deck where you're missing 2 slots, and you're like, hey, if I get the Scorn and I get the Silver Samurai, I'm making my opponent discard a card that they will have that's useful some way, shape, or form. And I'm discarding the Scorn, which gives my Scorn +2 power and makes this a 4/7. And that's a premium stat line again. Now, once you hit 5, you basically only have the MODOK that you can go with. And once you go into 6, the problem is that both APOC and Hela really don't work with Scorn. It's a little bit too low for the Hela and doesn't count for being discarded from the Hela because you never technically discard it. And the APOC wants to be discarded in an APOC deck. And the Scorn is little, the APOC is big, so do you throw both in there, hope for the best? If you get little, you get Scorn. If you get big, you get APOC. There's kind of an interesting thing happening with that. Now, the other plus side that it has is it's not affected by stuff like Cosmo. It's not affected by stuff like Enchantress. It's not affected by even Red Guardian or by Shadow King unless they can get it right on turn 6. You can hold on to this to turn 6. The problem is that so many of the other discard cards that exist are affected by Cosmo, because almost every single discard, other than a few of them, are activate cards. Now, there is a funny little way that you can play this card around, where you actually throw in stuff like Hellcow, and you throw in stuff like the Blade, and on end turn, you just discard your whole hand, and you activate the Hellcow. On turn 5, you play down the MODOK, you play down the Blade, you activate the Hellcow, and then the Scorn is going to hit 3 times. Once for the Hellcow, once for the Blade, and once for the MODOK, which is going to give you 6 extra power that just magically appeared on the board that your opponent really couldn't do anything about. So this end turn 6 power spike can come out of nowhere. So it isn't a bad card. It isn't a card that I am upset with. I'm just having a real hard time trying to figure out how to make it activate. And this is me coming up with some of the best ways to activate it. Maybe I just don't know what the best ways to activate this card is. But when I started going through a lot of the activate cards for this, the discard cards that can activate the Scorn, it's a very small pool. And that's good and bad. Because it's good because if there were more discard cards out there that could easily activate the Scorn, Scorn would be everywhere in the game. You don't need this card to do much to be good. One time, it is basically a 1/6. 2 times, it is a 1/10 for all intents and purposes. That's crazy to have a 1/10 that you can basically drop down. Now, it's not really a 1/10 because it itself would only be a 1/6 at that point, but it also gave 4 extra power to your side of the board while doing that. So, you have a card that has the ability to be a 10, a 12, a 14 for a 1-drop, but trying to find all the pieces to make it work really locks this deck down into a shell that doesn't have too many options on what it can pull in and what it can pull out, what it can slide and what it can slide out. Alright, I promised I would talk about it now. We'll talk about the Gambit at the end of this. There is a deck that is known as Machine Gun Gambit, where basically you play with Limbo, you play with Wong, you play with Onslaught, you play with Mystique, and at the very last turn, you play down Gambit. And you just start shooting every single card on your opponent's side of the board. And Swarm is kind of good for that because it's ammo, but Scorn is so much better at this as ammo because There are times where you'll be able to have stuff that's up to 300, 400 by getting the stuff like this happening. You are discarding so many, but the problem with that deck is it's so on the board. If you ever see a Wong and Limbo's out, if you ever see Limbo and you see a Wong and next to it is an Onslaught, and you don't have an Enchantress, you don't have a Cosmo, just walk away. You are not going to win that match. Alright, other than that, in this particular cache, we have horrible cards in this cache. Sebastian Shaw has not seen play since the time he came out. He came out, had about maybe a week, I'll say a week and a half, where he was of some value and then just dropped off the face of the universe. If the whole idea is that you're supposed to put Scorn and Sebastian Shaw together, I don't know what they're thinking about, because, again, if you discard, all the cards that discard cards have the ability to have Scorn thrown on them. So even if you have Sebastian Shaw down, you don't have a specific way of targeting that Sebastian Shaw. If you could, it'd be awesome, but this card doesn't do that. The other card in this particular week is Jean Grey. We have seen Jean Grey come into these Spotlight caches 1 too many times, 2 too many times, 3 too many times. I think everybody in the universe has a Jean Grey at this point. This is one of those cards that they just need to take out of the Spotlight cache. I like Jean Grey. I think I have a Jean Grey. I'm even pretty sure I have a alternate version of the Jean Grey. Let me just look at that for just 1 second. I'm kind of curious. Hang on. Pretty sure that not only do I have I know I have Jean Grey, but yep, I even have this nice little variant of her. This wonderful Phoenix Force variant, whatever they call it. So, in this week, there's not a lot that you're going for. Even the Scorn, while the Scorn's a good card, I'm not sure it's a needed card. It's a wanted card, I'll say that. If you get Scorn and you were playing with Swarm, you're pulling out Swarm, you're putting in Scorn in almost every single deck that's trying to do that. But on the other hand, if you just want to play this card, I think you're fine playing Swarm. I don't think this card replaces Swarm. It does by the grand scheme of the things. But I don't think you need to go out of your way to get this card just to replace Swarm. I don't think it's literally a card that exists for one specific card in one specific type of deck. It's basically saying, hey, Swarm, you're out, I'm in. And that's where it's going. I still roll every week because I like to make content. Let's see what we get in this box. Boxes. We actually got the Scorn. Okay. This Friday, I'm going to try out Scorn, try to see if I can make it work. If you want to watch me, I'll do this live on Twitch TV. I want to thank you all so much for watching, and as always, remember, play for fun.